This 4-year-old beggar girl sees a millionaire's wife become alligator food. But she saw everything and does something that shocked everyone. Watch until the end. Comment telling me what you thought of this story, giving it a score from 0 to 10. And comment what city you're watching me from. I really want to know if you liked my story, and I want to get to know you better. So subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scorching California sun beat mercilessly on the uneven stones of the sidewalk when Lily, a girl of just 4 years, dragged her bare, bruised feet toward the lake that lay at the back of the Harrison property. Her torn, filthy clothes told the story of 3 long weeks living on the streets of Atherton, picking scraps from restaurant dumpsters and sleeping wherever she could find shelter, under awnings, on park benches, or in the hidden corners of the downtown market. Her empty stomach ached so much she could barely walk straight, but she had heard other street kids say that sometimes ripe berries and fallen apples could be found near the trees in that wealthy part of town. The humid heat, typical of Atherton afternoons, made the air shimmer above the asphalt, and the crickets began their evening chorus among the foliage. Lily knew those sounds well. They were the same ones that accompanied her during the lonely nights she spent awake, afraid to sleep on the dangerous streets, walking slowly between the fragrant jasmine bushes and well-manicured hedges. She heard voices coming from the direction of the water. Curious and always cautious, the streets had taught her to distrust everything and everyone. She hid behind a bush of red hibiscus to see who was there. What she saw made her tremble with fear and confusion, her tiny heart hammering in her thin chest. A tall man, with slicked-back grey hair and expensive clothes, a white dress shirt and beige linen pants, was firmly holding the arms of a woman who seemed to be passed out or very drowsy. The woman had a huge belly, clearly many months pregnant, and her head lolled to the side, as if she couldn't stay awake. Her brown hair fell over her pale face, and her clothes, a delicate floral dress, were slightly wrinkled. The man was dragging her closer and closer to the edge of the lake, where Lily could see the bright, menacing eyes of alligators that lived in those dark, still waters. "There now, my dear sister-in-law," the man muttered in a voice that sent a shiver down Lily's spine. His voice had a cold, calculating tone, completely different from the loving voices the girl vaguely remembered from her parents. "It will be quick. No one will suspect a tragic accident. A pregnant woman who tripped and fell into the water. What a terrible tragedy." Lily clapped her dirty little hands over her mouth to keep from screaming. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew something terrible was about to occur. The pregnant woman was in danger, and there was no one around to help. The property was isolated, surrounded by high walls and gates that maintained the privacy of the wealthy residents. The man positioned the woman at the edge of the lake, where the ground was damp and slippery. The alligators moved slowly in the greenish water, as if sensing that something was happening. Lily could see at least 3 of them, their dark bodies gliding silently across the surface. As the man raised his hands to push the woman into the water, something inside her screamed louder than her paralyzing fear. "No!" she yelled with all the force of her small lungs, bursting out from behind the bushes like a tiny fury. "Leave her alone!" The man spun around, his grey eyes widening in shock at the sight of the dirty, barefoot girl who had appeared out of nowhere. For a crucial moment he hesitated, clearly distressed by the unexpected presence of the child who had ruined his plan. Lily began to pick up rocks from the dirt path and throw them at him with all her might, her small hands trembling with adrenaline and fear. "Go away! Leave the lady alone!" she shouted, as the little stones hit the man's legs and chest, making him raise his arms to protect himself. The commotion and shrill screams caused the pregnant woman to begin to stir, as if waking from a deep and strange sleep. She blinked several times, trying to focus her eyes and understand where she was and what was happening. Her movements were slow, uncoordinated, as if she were fighting against some substance that made her drowsy. "Sarah," the man said quickly, trying to sound concerned and helpful, but Lily noticed the nervousness in his voice and the way he slightly backed away from the water's edge. "You were walking, and you suddenly fainted. I was trying to help you get out of here." But the woman named Sarah looked around with growing confusion, saw the dangerous proximity of the muddy water and the alligators that were now moving with more interest, and her maternal instinct made her immediately retreat from the edge. "Eric, what? Why are we so close to the water?" she asked, her voice trembling not just with confusion, but with a growing fear. The man, Eric, shot a furious, threatening glare at Lily, which made the child shrink back, but not run away. "This girl appeared out of nowhere, screaming and throwing rocks. You fainted during your walk, and I was trying to carry you to a safe place, out of the sun." Sarah looked at the small girl, who still clutched rocks in her skinny hands, ready to throw again if necessary. There was something in the child's desperate and sincere expression that didn't match the calm story Eric was telling. The girl was trembling, but not from fear. She was trembling with a pure, protective rage. "Help me get out of here," Sarah asked, extending a hand to Eric, but keeping her distance from the water's edge. Her legs were still weak, wobbly, as if something were affecting her balance. When she managed to get completely away from the lake, leaning on Eric but never taking her eyes off the alligators, she slowly knelt down to Lily's level. "What's your name, little one?" "Lily," the girl answered in a low voice, still wary of Eric, who watched them with an expression she couldn't decipher, but that made her want to run and hide. "Lily saved me," the child said, looking directly into Sarah's brown eyes with a seriousness that was impressive for her age. "The bad man was going to push you into the alligator water. I saw everything." Eric laughed nervously, running a hand through his grey hair. "What an imagination. A street kid, right, Sarah? She must be hungry and seeing things. Probably hasn't eaten properly in days. Come on, you need to rest at home before Theodore gets worried." But Sarah continued to look at Lily with growing attention. The child was clearly in a state of total neglect, with clothes in tatters that must have once been pink, tangled blonde hair and dirt all over her small, thin body. More than that, there was a desperate sincerity in the girl's big blue eyes that stirred something deep in Sarah's maternal heart. "Where are your parents, Lily?" she asked with all the gentleness she could muster. The girl's eyes filled with tears that she tried to hold back, biting her bruised lower lip. "They're gone. The car hit a tree hard and they went to heaven. I've been on the street ever since, looking for food." Sarah felt her heart break completely. She looked at Eric, who was tapping his foot impatiently and checking the expensive watch on his wrist. "Sarah, let's go. Theodore will worry if you take too long to come back from your walk." "Theodore is my husband," Sarah explained to Lily, wiping away a tear that escaped the child's eyes. "And Eric is his brother." Something in the way Lily looked at Eric after this information made Sarah feel deeply uncomfortable. The child seemed to have a genuine, instinctive fear of the man, a visceral reaction that made no sense if he was really just trying to help a fainted sister-in-law. "Lily," Sarah said, making an impulsive decision that would change all of their lives, "do you want to come home with me? You urgently need food, a bath, and clean clothes." Eric intervened quickly, his voice taking on a firmer, more authoritative tone. "Sarah, you can't just bring any street kid into our house. Theodore won't like that idea at all." "Theodore will understand perfectly," Sarah replied with surprising firmness, gently taking Lily's small, dirty hand in a motherly way. "Come on, little one. You're safe now." As they walked slowly toward the large, imposing house, Lily looked back one last time and saw Eric standing alone near the lake, watching them walk away with a dark expression that made her squeeze Sarah's warm hand tighter. There was something in his grey eyes that clearly promised this wasn't over, that there would be consequences for ruining his plans. When they reached the entrance of the property, a tall, elegant man was waiting for them on the house's marble porch. Theodore Harrison was 42, with well-trimmed dark hair showing silver strands at the temples, and expensive clothes that clearly showed his privileged financial status. His tanned face creased with worry when he saw his wife arriving with a visibly abandoned child. "Sarah, where were you? Eric told me you had gone for a walk, but that was over 2 hours ago," he said, quickly descending the stone steps to hug his wife carefully, protecting her round belly. "I was starting to get worried." "Theodore, this is Lily. She saved me from a very dangerous situation," Sarah said, instinctively shielding the girl behind her legs, still feeling the strange effects of the drowsiness that had overcome her earlier. "Saved you? How so?" asked Theodore, looking at the small, dirty child with a genuine curiosity mixed with skepticism. Eric arrived at that exact moment, appearing slightly out of breath and with small marks from the rocks on his dress shirt. "Theodore, your wife fainted near the lake during her walk. Luckily, I found her in time." This girl appeared out of nowhere, causing a terrible fuss. Lily raised her clear blue eyes to Theodore, and with a courage that surprised even herself, said in a firm voice, "He was going to push her into the alligator water. I saw everything." The silence that followed was heavy with palpable tension. Theodore looked from Eric to Sarah, trying to process the contradictory information and understand what had really happened that afternoon. Eric laughed nervously, wiping his forehead where small beads of sweat had formed. "Theodore, you know how street kids are. They invent dramatic stories to get food and money. The girl is probably hallucinating from hunger." But when Theodore looked directly into his wife's eyes, he saw something that deeply disturbed him. There was real fear there, confusion, and an intense gratitude for the small child clinging to her hand. Sarah had never lied to him in 5 years of marriage, and her expression at that moment was not that of someone being deceived by a child. "Sarah," Theodore said carefully, "do you remember exactly what happened?" Sarah hesitated, running her free hand over her forehead. "I was walking, like I always do in the late afternoon. I remember feeling strangely tired, much more than usual. And then I was waking up near the water with Eric holding me. But the position, the proximity of the alligators..." She shuddered. It didn't make sense. Eric interrupted quickly. "Sarah, you're 8 months pregnant. It's normal to feel dizzy and faint. I was trying to carry you away from the sun when this girl started screaming and throwing rocks at me." Theodore noticed how Eric avoided looking directly at him as he spoke, and how his hands trembled slightly. He had known his younger brother for 38 years, and something in his behavior wasn't right. "Lily," Theodore said, kneeling to be at the girl's eye level, "can you tell me exactly what you saw?" The child looked at Eric, who was staring at her with intimidating intensity, then looked back at Theodore. He was dragging her really close to the water where the alligators are, and he said it would be quick, that no one would suspect, that it would look like an accident. Theodore's face visibly paled. Eric laughed too loudly, the sound echoing falsely in the quiet afternoon. "Theodore, for God's sake, you're going to believe a street kid over your own brother?" But at that moment, Sarah remembered something that made her shudder. "Theodore, I was walking, and suddenly I felt very sleepy. It wasn't the normal tiredness of pregnancy. It was as if..." She paused, touching her own mouth. "As if I had taken something that made me that way." The ensuing silence was deafening. The 3 adults looked at each other, while Lily watched everything with her big eyes, not fully understanding the implications of what she had revealed, but feeling the tension in the air grow like a storm about to break. The tension in the air was so thick it seemed to make breathing difficult as Theodore slowly stood up, his gaze shifting between his pregnant wife and his younger brother. Eric was visibly nervous, running his hands through his grey hair and avoiding direct eye contact, a behavior Theodore knew well from their childhood when Eric had caused some mischief. "Sarah, you need to rest," Theodore said finally, his voice controlled but filled with a concern that went far beyond his wife's physical well-being. "Let's go inside. Lily, you're coming with us." Eric stepped forward, blocking their path. "Theodore, don't you think it would be better to take the girl to a shelter first? Sarah needs peace and quiet, and a strange child in the house." "The girl stays." Theodore cut in with a firmness that surprised even himself, at least until we understand what happened today better. As they climbed the porch steps, Lily observed everything with her big, curious eyes. The house was larger and more luxurious than any place she had ever been. The white columns shone in the afternoon sun, and through the windows she could see elegant furniture and crystal chandeliers that reflected the light like tiny rainbows. Inside the house, the contrast with her life on the streets was even more striking. The polished marble floor was so clean she could see her reflection, and there was a soft scent of flowers coming from large decorative vases scattered around the entrance. Lily held Sarah's hand tighter, intimidated by the grandeur but feeling safe next to the woman she had saved. "Maria," Theodore called, and a middle-aged woman appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on an apron. She was the housekeeper, a robust lady with grey hair tied in a bun, with kind but surprised eyes upon seeing the dirty child. "Mr. Harrison, is Mrs. Harrison okay? She looks pale," Maria said, approaching with motherly concern. "Maria, this is Lily. She'll be staying with us for a while. Can you prepare a bath for her and find some clothes, and maybe something for her to eat?" Maria looked at the small, skinny girl, and her maternal heart was immediately moved. "Of course, sir. Come on, dear, you must be hungry." But Lily hesitated, squeezing Sarah's hand. "Mom, are you going to be okay? The bad man won't hurt you." Sarah knelt with difficulty, her large belly making the movement awkward, and held the girl's small face between her hands. "I'll be fine, Lily. You saved me, remember? Now you're safe here with us." Eric watched the scene with growing irritation. "Theodore, we need to talk. Alone." "Later, Eric. Right now I want Sarah to rest." When Maria took Lily to the back of the house, promising a warm bath and food, Theodore helped Sarah sit in an armchair in the living room. Eric remained standing, restless, constantly fidgeting with the expensive watch on his wrist. "Sarah," Theodore said gently, "tell me exactly how you felt during the walk. Don't leave out any details." Sarah closed her eyes, trying to remember. "I went for a walk, as I always do, around 3 o'clock. I was feeling fine, even cheerful, but when I got near the lake, I started to feel strangely sleepy. It wasn't the normal tiredness of pregnancy, Theodore. It was as if my muscles were heavy, as if I was fighting against something." "And did you drink or eat anything before you left?" Eric spoke up quickly. "She had the tea she always has before her walks. I prepared it for her myself, as I do every day." Theodore turned slowly to his brother. "You prepared the tea?" "Of course. I always help Sarah with little things while you're at the office working. It's the least I can do to repay your hospitality." There was something in Eric's defensive tone that deeply bothered Theodore. "Since when do you prepare tea for my wife?" "Since I came to live here 6 months ago. Theodore, you're working so much you barely notice these small kindnesses." Sarah's eyes suddenly opened. "Theodore, now that I think about it, that tea tasted slightly different today, more bitter than usual." The silence that followed was broken by Lily's joyful shouts coming from the bathroom. Maria was clearly spoiling the child, and the sounds of happiness contrasted sharply with the growing tension in the main room. Eric laughed nervously. "Sarah, you're 8 months pregnant. Your sense of taste is altered. It's completely normal. But Theodore was starting to piece together a disturbing puzzle. Eric, explain to me why you were at the lake exactly when Sarah fainted. I was worried because she took longer than usual. I went out to look for her. And how did you know she was at the lake? Eric hesitated for a fraction of a second, but it was long enough for Theodore to notice. I followed the path she always takes on her walks. Theodore stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the lake in the distance. Eric, are you sure that's what happened? Theodore, are you doubting me because of a street kid who made up a crazy story? At that moment, Maria appeared in the room with a worried expression. Mr. Harrison, may I speak with you for a moment? It's about the girl. Theodore followed her to the kitchen, where Lily was sitting at the table, clean and wearing one of the old dresses Maria had saved from when she cared for other children in the family. The transformation was stunning. Washed and well-dressed, the girl was revealed to be even more beautiful, with shiny blonde hair and extraordinary blue eyes. Sir, Maria whispered, the girl told me something while I was bathing her. She said she saw Mr. Eric near the lake other times, always alone, digging holes in the ground. Theodore felt a chill run down his spine. Is she sure? Yes, sir. She said she had been watching that spot for a few days, looking for fruit that fell from the trees, and that she saw Mr. Eric there several times, always at dawn or very early, digging in the dirt near the bank. Lily looked at Theodore with her big eyes. Uncle Theodore, the bad man was burying things there, shiny things. What kind of shiny things? Like the rings that ladies wear, and other small golden things. Theodore knelt beside Lily's chair. Lily, are you absolutely sure of what you saw? Yes, I am. And I also saw him talking on the phone, talking about money and people who were going to be angry with him. Maria and Theodore exchanged a meaningful look. The puzzle was coming together, and the picture that emerged was terrifying. Mr. Harrison, Maria said in a low voice, for a few weeks now I've noticed that small but valuable things from the house have been disappearing. Your mother's gold watch, some of Mrs. Harrison's antique rings, some old coins from your collection. And why didn't you tell me? I thought maybe Mrs. Harrison had put them away somewhere else or taken them to be cleaned. I didn't want to create unnecessary trouble. Theodore felt as if the floor was disappearing from under his feet. His younger brother, whom he had welcomed into his home when Eric lost his job 6 months ago, was not only stealing from the family, but had tried to. The possibility was so horrible, he could barely form the thought. Returning to the living room, Theodore found Eric nervously shuffling through papers on the coffee table, as if looking for something specific. Eric, what are you doing? Nothing, just organizing some things. What things? At that moment, Sarah stirred in the armchair, groaning softly. Theodore, I'm not feeling well. Very unwell. Theodore rushed to her, noticing that her face was even paler, and she seemed to be having trouble breathing. Sarah, what's happening? I think I need to go to the hospital. Something's not right with the baby. Eric approached quickly. I'll take her, Theodore. You stay here and look after the girl. No, Theodore said with absolute firmness. I'll take my wife myself. You stay here. But Theodore, you stay here, Eric, and don't even think about leaving this house until I get back. As Theodore helped Sarah up to take her to the car, Lily came running from the kitchen. Miss Sarah, are you going to be okay? I will be, little one. You stay here with Maria, okay? But when Lily looked at Eric, who was watching the scene with an expression she couldn't decipher, the girl felt the same cold knot in her stomach she had felt at the lake. There was something in his eyes that promised that as soon as Theodore left, very bad things were going to happen. The sound of Theodore's car driving away on the gravel road echoed through the property like a dark omen. Lily watched from the living room window until the tail lights disappeared completely around the bend, feeling her small heart race as she realized she was now alone in the house with the man who had tried to hurt Miss Sarah. Eric remained motionless for a few minutes after the car disappeared from sight, as if calculating his next moves. Then, slowly, he turned to face Lily with a smile that didn't reach his grey eyes. "Well, little one," he said, his voice taking on a syrupy tone that made the girl instinctively retreat. "Now it's just the two of us here. How about we have a little chat?" Maria appeared from the kitchen at that moment, drying her hands on her apron. "Mr. Eric, I'll start making dinner. Lily, come with me, dear. You can help me peel potatoes." "Actually, Maria," Eric interrupted quickly, "I think the girl should rest a bit. It's been a very hectic day for her. Why don't you go to the market to buy a few things for dinner? I'll look after her in the meantime." Maria hesitated, looking from Eric to Lily. There was something in his tone she didn't like, a forced urgency that activated her protective instincts. "That's not necessary, sir. I have everything I need here." "I insist," Eric said, his voice acquiring an authority he rarely showed. "I need some medicine from the pharmacy, too. Sarah might need it when she gets back." The housekeeper still hesitated, but the mention of medicine for Sarah convinced her. "All right, sir, but I'll be back in half an hour." As Maria grabbed her purse and keys, Lily ran to her and whispered in her ear, "Miss Maria, I don't want to be alone with him." Maria knelt to the girl's level. "Why, dear? He has bad person eyes, just like the bad men on the street who hurt kids." The housekeeper glanced at Eric, who was pretending to examine some papers on the table, but was clearly paying attention to their conversation. "Lily, you'll be fine. If you need anything, scream really loud, okay?" When Maria finally left, the silence in the house became oppressive. Lily curled up on the large sofa, trying to make herself small and invisible, while Eric paced the room with measured steps, like a predator circling its prey. "Lily," he said finally, sitting in the armchair across from her, "you're a very smart girl, aren't you?" The child didn't answer, just watched him with her big, suspicious eyes. "Too smart for your own good," Eric continued, leaning forward. "Tell me, what exactly do you think you saw at the lake today?" "I saw you trying to push the lady into the alligator water," Lily answered, with more courage than she actually felt. Eric laughed, but the sound had no joy in it. "Ah, but is that what you're going to tell people? Because, you see, little one, who do you think they'll believe? A respected member of the Harrison family or a street kid nobody knows?" Lily felt tears sting her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "Uncle Theodore believed me." "Theodore is confused right now, but when I explain what happened properly, he'll understand you made it all up to get to stay in a rich house." Eric got up and began to circle the sofa where she was sitting. "You know what the problem is with girls like you? You don't know when to keep your mouth shut." Lily's heart was beating so hard, she was sure he could hear it. "I'm not going to say anything else." "Ah, but the problem is you've already said too much." Eric stopped behind the sofa, placing his hands on the girl's small shoulders. "And now I need to resolve this situation." At that moment, the house phone rang, making them both jump. Eric hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello? Theodore?" His voice changed instantly, becoming concerned and brotherly. "How's Sarah? Is the baby okay?" "I see. No, don't worry, everything's quiet here. The girl is asleep. Of course, I'll call you if anything happens." When he hung up, Eric turned to Lily with a satisfied expression. "Sarah is going to be admitted overnight for observation. Theodore won't be back until tomorrow morning. That gives us plenty of time to resolve our little conversation." Lily knew she had to get out of there. She quickly jumped up from the sofa and ran towards the kitchen, but Eric was faster. He intercepted her in the hallway, grabbing her thin arm tightly. "Where do you think you're going? Let me go, you're hurting me. This is nothing compared to what could happen if you keep spreading lies about me." Eric pulled her back into the living room. "Sit down and let's have a grown-up conversation." But as he forced Lily to sit, she managed to break free for a moment and ran into Theodore's office. The door was ajar, and she hid behind the large, dark wood desk. The office smelled of leather and tobacco, with shelves full of books and papers scattered across the desk. Eric found her quickly. "Lily, you're making things unnecessarily complicated." While trying to hide better behind the desk, Lily accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. Among them, she saw something that made her eyes widen, a folder with "Eric Debts" handwritten on it by Theodore. Eric saw where she was looking and quickly snatched the folder. "This is none of your business, girl." But Lily had an extraordinary memory, and in the few seconds the folder was open, she managed to see huge numbers written on the top page. She couldn't read completely, but she knew large numbers well enough to understand there were many zeros. "What are all those numbers?" she asked, more out of childish curiosity than malice. Eric shut the folder abruptly. "They're adult matters that children don't understand." As he nervously put the papers away, Lily noticed something that had fallen to the floor. A small card from a place called the Royal Palms Casino. She didn't know what a casino was, but she stored the information in her memory. "Let's get out of here," Eric said, pulling her by the arm again. But as they passed through the living room, Lily saw something that made her stop. On the coffee table, among the magazines, was a small glass vial that she was sure hadn't been there before. It looked like the medicine she had seen on the street when people got very sleepy after taking it. "What's that medicine?" she asked, pointing to the vial. Eric followed her gaze and paled. He quickly grabbed the vial and hid it in his pocket. "It's nothing that concerns you." But Lily had read the name on the label before he hid it. It was the same name of a medicine she had seen a man give to a woman on the street, who then became very sleepy and confused. The memory made her understand, with terrifying clarity, what had happened to Sarah. "You're the one who put that in Miss Sarah's tea," she said, backing away. Eric's face transformed, all pretense of kindness vanishing. "You are a very dangerous child, Lily." At that moment, they heard the sound of a car approaching the house. Eric ran to the window and cursed under his breath. "Maria's back early." Lily took advantage of the distraction and ran to the kitchen, where she hid under the large table. When Maria entered through the back door, she found Eric trying to look casual in the living room. "Mr. Eric, how's Lily?" "She's fine, Maria. Went upstairs to sleep." But just then, Lily ran out from the kitchen. "Miss Maria! Miss Maria!" The housekeeper knelt to receive the girl, who threw herself into her arms, trembling. "What happened, dear?" "He put medicine in Miss Sarah's tea. I saw the bottle." Maria looked at Eric, who was laughing nervously. "The girl has a wild imagination, Maria. She must be traumatized by everything that happened today." But Maria knew children well enough to know when they were telling the truth. "Lily, what kind of medicine?" "One that makes people very sleepy, just like the ones bad men use on the street." The silence that followed was broken by the ringing of the phone. Eric answered it quickly, but his expression changed drastically during the call. "What? Are you sure?" "No, I'm not leaving the house." "All right." When he hung up, he was visibly disturbed. Maria and Lily watched him as he ran a hand through his grey hair, clearly panicking. "Who was that?" Maria asked. "Theodore. Sarah's blood tests showed strange substances. They're going to investigate." Eric looked directly at Lily, and she saw something in his eyes that made her tremble with fear. "And he's on his way home now." The panic in Eric's eyes was so visible that even Lily, at 4 years old, could clearly perceive it. He started pacing back and forth in the living room, nervously running his hands through his grey hair and constantly checking the watch on his wrist. "Mr. Eric," Maria said carefully, still holding Lily close, "are you all right? You seem very nervous." "I'm fine, Maria, just worried about Sarah." but his voice betrayed the growing desperation he felt. "Listen, I need to step out for a few minutes. I have to take care of an urgent matter in town. But Mr. Harrison told you to stay home until he got back. It's just for a few minutes, Maria. I won't be long." Lily pressed closer against Maria. There was something in Eric's urgency that scared her deeply. "Miss Maria, don't let him leave. He's going to do something bad." Eric stopped pacing and looked directly at the girl. "Lily, you need to stop making up stories about me." "I'm not making anything up. You put medicine in Miss Sarah's tea and now you want to run away." Maria felt the tension in the air become almost suffocating. She had known the Harrison family for 15 years and had never witnessed a situation like this. "Mr. Eric, maybe it would be best for you to wait for Mr. Harrison to return. If there's some misunderstanding, it's better to clear everything up in person." "There is no misunderstanding," Eric exploded, losing his composure for the first time. "It's a street kid making ridiculous accusations." At that moment, the phone rang again. Eric hesitated before answering, but he knew not answering would be even more suspicious. "Hello? Yes, this is Eric Harrison." "What? No. There must be some mistake." His voice grew progressively higher and more desperate. "I never. That's impossible. No, I'm not leaving the house." When he hung up, his hands were visibly shaking. Maria and Lily watched as he leaned against the phone table, as if his legs could no longer support him. "Who was that?" Maria asked, though she feared the answer. Eric was silent for a long moment before answering, his voice reduced to a whisper. "The bank. It seems someone reported suspicious activity on the company's account." Maria felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of activity?" "Nothing important. Just some administrative issues that I can easily explain." But Lily, with her extraordinary memory, remembered the papers she had seen in the office. Was it the big numbers that were in the folder? The numbers with lots of zeros? Eric turned to her with an expression that made Maria instinctively pull the child tighter against her. "You shouldn't have seen that." "What did the girl see, Mr. Eric?" Maria asked, her voice taking on a protective tone. "Nothing important, just some work documents." But Lily continued, her childish voice contrasting with the gravity of what she was saying. "There was a folder that said Eric, debts, and very big numbers, and a card from a place called the Royal Palms Casino." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria knew well what casinos were, places where people lost a lot of money gambling, and if Eric had large debts. "Mr. Eric," she said carefully, "are you in financial trouble?" "Of course not," he lied, but his voice was desperate now. "It's just temporary investments that went wrong." Just then, they heard the sound of tires screeching on the gravel driveway. Eric ran to the window and saw Theodore's car approaching the house at a much faster speed than usual. "He's back," Eric muttered, and Maria noticed his hands were shaking so much he could barely hold the curtains. "Why are you so scared if you haven't done anything wrong?" Lily asked, with the brutal honesty of children. Before Eric could answer, the front door flew open. Theodore entered the house with a dark expression Maria had never seen before. He held an envelope in his hands, and there were two men in suits behind him. "Eric," Theodore said in a controlled voice filled with fury, "we need to talk, now." "Theodore, how is Sarah? Is the baby okay?" "Sarah is stable, no thanks to you." Theodore approached his brother slowly, like a predator closing in on its prey. "The doctors found traces of a sedative in her blood, a very specific sedative used to render people unconscious." Eric tried to laugh, but the sound came out choked. "That's ridiculous, Theodore. Why would I do something like that?" "Good question." Theodore opened the envelope and pulled out several papers. "Maybe it has to do with the $300,000 you've stolen from the company over the last 6 months." Maria gasped, covering her mouth with her free hand while still holding Lily. The girl didn't fully understand what that amount of money meant, but from the adult's reaction, she knew it was something very serious. "Theodore, I can explain." "Can you? Then also explain why you forged my signature on 17 different checks." Theodore threw the papers onto the coffee table. "And explain to me why you have $500,000 in debt at the Royal Palms Casino." Lily whispered to Maria, "I told you about the casino card." "You saw the card, dear?" Maria whispered back. "Yes, I did. He dropped it in the office." Eric heard the whisper and looked at Lily with a rage that made the child hide completely behind Maria. "This girl is making everything up. She's trying to destroy our family." "Our family?" Theodore laughed bitterly. "You destroyed our family when you decided that trying to kill my pregnant wife was a solution to your gambling problems. I never tried to kill Sarah. That's absurd." "That's not what the evidence shows." One of the men in suits stepped forward. "Mr. Eric Harrison, I'm Detective Miller. We'd like you to accompany us for some questions." The terror in Eric's eyes was now absolute. He looked around the room like a cornered animal, searching for an escape that didn't exist. "No, I can't go now. I have things to sort out here." "Sir, it's not a request," the detective said firmly. Eric suddenly turned to Lily, his eyes gleaming with a desperate idea. "Wait, the girl. She's not who you think she is." Theodore frowned. "What do you mean?" She's not just some street kid. I recognized her, but I didn't say anything before because..." He hesitated, clearly inventing as he spoke. "Because she's the daughter of someone you know." Maria held Lily tighter, sensing something terrible was about to be revealed. "Whose?" Theodore asked, though there was skepticism in his voice. The company's former accountant, Lucy Mendez. The one who disappeared 2 years ago after discovering irregularities in the books." The silence that followed was total. Lily didn't understand what was happening, but she felt that the name Eric had said meant something very important to Theodore. "Lucy Mendez," Theodore repeated slowly. "Yes, the woman who tried to accuse me of theft 2 years ago, remember? She made up that whole story about missing money. And when you started to investigate, she fled town." Theodore looked at Lily with a completely new expression. "You're saying Lily is Lucy's daughter?" "I am. And now she's back using her own daughter to get revenge on me." Lily looked confusedly from one adult to another. "My mom's name was Lucy," she said in a low voice. "But she didn't run away. She and my dad died in the car accident." The revelation fell on everyone like a bombshell. Theodore knelt in front of Lily, studying her small face with a new intensity. "Lily," he said gently, "did your mother work with numbers, with accounts and papers?" "Yes, she did. She always said she took care of people's money." Theodore stood up slowly, his face pale. Lucy Mendez had been his most competent accountant, and when she had raised suspicions about financial irregularities involving Eric, he had doubted her. And now her daughter was here, having saved his wife and exposed the very same irregularities her mother had tried to report 2 years earlier. "Eric," Theodore said in a voice that chilled everyone's blood in the room, "what exactly happened to Lucy Mendez?" Theodore's question echoed through the room like a gunshot, and Eric recoiled as if he had been physically struck. His face went from pale to grey, and Maria noticed his hands were shaking so much he had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. "Theodore, I don't know what you're talking about," Eric stammered, but his voice sounded desperate and unconvincing. "You don't know." Theodore approached his brother, his voice low but loaded with a dangerous threat. "Lucy Mendez found out you were stealing money from the company. She came to me with evidence, but I doubted her. I said you were my brother, that you would never do something like that. And the next day, she disappeared." Lily listened to everything with her big eyes wide. Even without fully understanding the details, she sensed they were talking about terrible things that had happened to her mother. "Uncle Theodore," she said in her small voice, "my mum was very sad before the accident. She cried every night and said bad people were going to hurt us." Detective Miller approached Lily, kneeling to her level. "Lily, did your mother tell you why she was scared?" "She said she found out a man was stealing, and that this man was dangerous, that if we didn't leave town, he would do bad things to us." Theodore felt as if he had been punched in the gut. "Eric, did you threaten Lucy?" "I never. That's ridiculous." Eric tried to laugh, but the sound came out like a strangled groan. "Theodore, are you going to believe a 4-year-old child over me?" "I'm going to believe a child who has the most accurate memory I've ever seen," Theodore replied. "Lily remembered your casino card, the numbers of the debts, the medicine bottle. Why would she make things up about her mother?" Maria, who was still holding Lily protectively, felt the child tremble against her. "Ma'am," Lily whispered, "I remember more things about the bad man who threatened my mom." "What things, dear?" "He had a voice just like Uncle Eric's, and he told my mom that accidents happen to people who talk too much." The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of Eric's cell phone ringing. All eyes turned to him as he checked who was calling. His face turned even paler when he saw the name on the screen. "I'm not answering," he muttered. "Who is it?" Detective Miller asked. "No one important." But the phone continued to ring insistently. Finally, Theodore snatched the device from his brother's trembling hands and answered. "Hello? Who would like to speak with Eric?" "I see." "Yes, he's here." Theodore covered the phone and looked directly at Eric. "It's someone from the Royal Palms Casino. They say you have an urgent debt to pay by midnight tonight, or there will be serious consequences." Eric collapsed into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "Theodore, you don't understand the situation I'm in." "Then explain it to me," Theodore said, handing the phone back without hanging up. "Explain it to all of us." Eric looked up, and Maria saw a mixture of desperation and something that looked like relief, as if carrying that weight for so long had finally become unbearable. "It started 3 years ago," he said in a broken voice. "I was going through a tough time after the divorce. I started going to the casino just to distract myself, betting small amounts. And then," Theodore pressed, "the small amounts became large. The more I lost, the more I bet, trying to win the money back. In a few months, I owed more than I could pay." Lily listened attentively, storing every word in her extraordinary memory, even without fully understanding the meaning. "And that's when you started stealing from the company," Theodore said, not as a question, but as a statement. "I thought it was temporary," Eric continued, tears starting to stream down his face, "that I could win it back and replace the money before anyone noticed. But someone did notice. Lucy noticed." "Yes." Eric's voice was now just a whisper. "She was too good at her job. She started asking questions, investigating discrepancies in the books." Detective Miller approached with a recorder. "Mr. Harrison, would you like to continue this confession at the station?" "No!" Eric suddenly shouted, rising from the chair. "You don't understand. It's not just about the money. There are dangerous people involved in this." "What people?" Theodore asked. "The casino owners. They're not just regular businessmen. When you owe them a lot of money, they..." He shuddered. "They'll do anything to collect." Maria held Lily tighter. "What kind of things?" "They threaten your family. They make accidents happen. And when Lucy started investigating, they found out and..." His voice failed. "And what?" Theodore insisted, though he feared the answer. "They said if I didn't solve the accountant problem, they would solve it their way. And when you didn't believe her accusations, I thought the problem was solved." "But it wasn't," Lily said suddenly, her voice small but clear. because my mom kept looking for proof. Everyone turned to the girl. Eric looked at her with an expression of growing terror. Your mother didn't give up, Lily continued. She told me she was going to talk to other important people to stop the bad man. What other people? Detective Miller asked. I don't know, Lily replied, but she said she was going to the police and other places to tell them about the stolen money. Eric stood up abruptly. Theodore, you have to protect me. If they find out I told you all this. Protect you? You tried to kill my pregnant wife. No, you don't understand. Eric was in a total panic now. They said if I couldn't get the money to pay the debts by today, they would go after everyone in the family. I thought if something happened to Sarah, you would give me her inheritance to save our lives. The horrific confession left everyone paralyzed. Maria placed her hands over Lily's ears, trying to protect her from hearing any more terrible details. You were willing to kill my wife and my child for money, Theodore asked in a voice that didn't sound human. It wasn't just for money, it was for our lives. They'll kill us all if I don't pay. At that moment, the house phone rang again. Theodore answered with trembling hands. Hello? Yes, he's here. What? No, that's not possible. His expression changed from confusion to absolute horror. I understand. We're on our way now. When he hung up, everyone waited in tense silence. That was the hospital, Theodore said in a hoarse voice. Sarah went into premature labor. The baby is in danger. Eric collapsed back into the chair. Oh my God, what have I done? Mr. Harrison, so Detective Miller said, you need to go to the hospital. We'll take it from here. But as Theodore prepared to leave, Lily ran up to him and tugged on his shirt. Uncle Theodore, there are more important things I remembered about the bad man who threatened my mom. What else, dear? He said he was going to do the same to other families if they tried to stop him. And I think it's already started. Everyone turned to look at the girl. What do you mean? The detective asked. Because before I came here, I saw him talking on the phone near the lake, and he was talking about another lady who also had a baby in her belly. The terror that took over Eric's face confirmed that Lily was right. There were other victims, and the nightmare was far from over. Lily's revelation about other families in danger fell upon everyone like a sentence. Theodore was paralyzed between the urgent need to rush to the hospital where his wife was fighting to save their child's life, and the horror of knowing that other innocent people were in mortal danger. Lily, Detective Miller said, kneeling again to the girl's level, can you tell us exactly what you heard Eric say on the phone? The child looked at Eric, who was staring at her with a mixture of fear and a silent plea, then turned her clear eyes to the detective. He was talking about a lady who lives in a big house with a golden gate. He said she was also going to have a baby and that it would be easier because she always walks alone. Theodore felt his blood run cold. Golden Gate? Are you talking about the Montero family? Eric buried his face in his hands, involuntarily confirming the suspicion. Carmen Montero is 7 months pregnant, Theodore told the detective. Her husband travels a lot for work. She's alone at the property most of the time. Mr. Harrison, the detective said urgently, you need to go to the hospital to be with your wife. We'll go to the Montero family immediately. But Theodore hesitated, looking at Lily. The girl had saved his wife and was now saving other families with her extraordinary memory. Lily is coming with me, he said suddenly. Theodore, that's not wise, Maria protested. The hospital is no place for a child, and she's been through enough trauma today. She's coming with me, Theodore repeated firmly. If there are more details that only she remembers, I need her nearby. Eric looked up from his hands. Theodore, please. I know I screwed everything up, but they'll kill me if they find out I talked. You should have thought of that before you tried to kill my family, Theodore replied coldly, picking Lily up in his arms. Maria, you're coming with us. It's not safe to stay here. As they headed to the car, Lily whispered in Theodore's ear, "Uncle Theodore, I remember more things about the phone call." "What else, dear?" "He said a strange name, something like Vincent Carbonari." Theodore stopped abruptly. Vincent Carbonari was known in Atherton as a businessman with questionable dealings, owner not only of the Royal Palms Casino, but of several other companies that were always under suspicion of illegal activities. "Detective!" Theodore shouted to Miller, who was handcuffing Eric. "Vincent Carbonari is involved in this." The detective visibly paled. "That changes everything. If Carbonari is behind this, then it's not just gambling debts, it's much more serious." "What do you mean?" Theodore asked. "Carbonari doesn't work alone. If he's putting pressure on your brother, it's because there's a larger scheme involved." At that moment, Theodore's cell phone rang. It was from the hospital. "Mr. Harrison, it's urgent that you come immediately. Your wife is in complicated labor and is asking for you constantly." Theodore looked at Lily, then at the detective. "I'm going to the hospital. Please protect the Montero family." "We're sending a team there now," Miller promised. On the way to the hospital, with Maria and Lily in the back seat, Theodore tried to process everything that had happened. In less than 12 hours, his life had completely transformed. His wife had been nearly murdered by his own brother, his business had been plundered, and now he discovered he was involved in something much larger and more dangerous than he had imagined. "Uncle Theodore," Lily said softly, "my mom used to say that when bad things happen, there's always someone trying to hide something much bigger." "Ooh, your mother was very wise," Theodore replied, looking at the girl in the rearview mirror. "Lily, do you remember anything else your mother discovered about Eric?" The child was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "She said she found papers that showed it wasn't just money that was missing." "What else was missing?" "Things from other people, like he was taking secrets from many rich families." Maria and Theodore exchanged worried glances. "What kind of secrets?" Maria asked gently. "My mum said he knew things that people didn't want anyone to know, and that he used that to get more money." Theodore felt a new horror settle in. "Blackmail," he murmured. When they arrived at the hospital, Theodore ran to the maternity ward, carrying Lily in his arms. Maria followed them, worried about both Sarah and the child who had become their responsibility. "Mr. Harrison," a nurse called out, "your wife is in the operating room. The baby is in a difficult position and she's lost a lot of blood." "Is the baby going to be okay?" Theodore asked, his voice broken with emotion. "We're doing everything we can. The sedatives she ingested have complicated the labor, but she's strong." Lily tugged on Theodore's shirt. "Uncle, Miss Sarah is going to be okay because she's very brave, just like my mom was." While they waited for news from the surgery, Theodore's cell phone rang. It was Detective Miller. "Theodore, we have problems. We arrived at the Montero house and found evidence that someone was watching the property. There are recent footprints around the house and spying equipment hidden in the garden." "Is Carmen okay?" "She is, but she's terrified. And there's more. We found a list in Eric's house with the names of several wealthy families in the area. All of them have pregnant women." Theodore felt his legs weaken. "How many families?" 8. And next to each name, there's detailed information about routines, schedules, security weak points. My God. "Theodore, this is no longer just about gambling debts. Carbonari is using your brother for something much bigger. We're talking about an extortion and blackmail ring that could involve dozens of families." At that moment, Lily tugged on Theodore's shirt again. "Uncle, I remember something else important." "What is it, dear?" "When the bad man was talking on the phone near the lake, he mentioned something about photos." "What kind of photos?" "Photos of people doing things they shouldn't be doing. He said the photos were worth a lot of money." Theodore passed this information to the detective, who was silent for a moment. Theodore, that confirms our suspicions. Carbonari isn't just collecting gambling debts. He's building a blackmail file on the richest families in the region. For what? Power, control. With compromising information on influential people, he can manipulate political decisions, public contracts, anything he wants. Just then, the nurse came running. Mr. Harrison. Come quick, your wife is calling for you. Theodore ran to the operating room with Lily still in his arms. Through the window, he saw Sarah on the surgical table, pale but conscious, holding a tiny baby in her arms. Theodore, she called weakly. Our son, he was born. Tears streamed down Theodore's face as he saw his son for the first time, small and fragile, but alive and crying lustily. Lily looked at the baby with admiration. He's beautiful, Uncle Theodore, and Miss Sarah is okay. But the joy of the moment was interrupted when Theodore's cell phone rang again. Detective Miller's voice was altered by urgency and fear. Theodore, you need to know, Eric escaped during transport to the station, and we intercepted a call from Carbonari. He's on his way to the hospital. Theodore's blood ran cold. What? It seems Eric told Carbonari about the girl and what she knows. They're coming for Lily. Theodore looked at the child in his arms, then at his wife and newborn son in the operating room. He was trapped between protecting his family and protecting the brave girl who had saved them all. The panic that seized Theodore was so intense that for a moment he was completely paralyzed, holding Lily against his chest as he processed the terrifying information Detective Miller had just given him. Carbonari was coming to the hospital, and Eric had escaped. How much time do we have? Theodore asked, his voice low so as not to scare Lily. 15 minutes, tops. Theodore, you need to get out of there with the girl now. I can't leave Sarah and my son. She just gave birth. She's still in surgery. Maria, who had overheard the conversation, approached quickly. Mr. Harrison, I'll stay with Mrs. Harrison. You need to protect Lily. Uncle Theodore, Lily said softly, looking up at him with her big, serious blue eyes. I don't want the bad man to hurt the baby and Miss Sarah because of me. This isn't your fault, dear. You saved our family. But now they want to get me because of what I know, right? The maturity in the 4-year-old's voice broke Theodore's heart. She had lost her parents, lived on the streets, witnessed an attempted murder, and was now being hunted by dangerous criminals. And yet, her concern was for the safety of others. Mr. Harrison, a nurse called, your wife is asking where you are. She wants to see you with the baby. Theodore looked through the operating room window and saw Sarah, still pale but awake, holding their newborn son. Her eyes searched for him with desperate urgency. 5 minutes, he said to the detective over the phone. Give me 5 minutes with my family. Entering the operating room with Lily, Theodore approached the gurney where Sarah lay. His son, small and red, slept peacefully in her arms. Theodore, Sarah whispered, is he okay? The doctor said the sedatives. He's perfect, Theodore replied, kissing his wife's forehead, strong like his mother. Sarah noticed the tension on her husband's face. What's happening? Where's Eric? Sarah, Eric confessed everything. He tried to kill you for money, and now there are very dangerous people after him. And Lily. Sarah's eyes widened. Lily's in danger. She knows things that could destroy an entire criminal network, and they won't stop until they silence her. Sarah looked at the small girl, who was watching the baby with childish fascination. She's just a child who has an extraordinary memory and who overheard conversations that could put very powerful people in prison. At that moment, Lily approached the gurney. Miss Sarah, your baby is so beautiful, like my parents were with me before they went to heaven. Lily, dear, Sarah said, taking the girl's small hand with her free one, you have been so brave, braver than many adults. I just want people to stop hurting other people, Lily replied simply. Theodore's phone vibrated. It was a text from the detective. Carbonari's men have been seen entering the hospital. Get out now. We have to go, Theodore said urgently. But as they headed for the door, a man in a dark suit appeared in the hallway. It wasn't Carbonari, but he clearly worked for him. Theodore recognized the type immediately. Cold eyes, military posture, a visible scar on his neck. "Mr. Harrison," the man said in a calm but threatening voice, "Mr. Carbonari would like a word with you." "I have nothing to say to Carbonari." "I think you do, especially about the girl you're carrying." Lily pressed against Theodore, whispering, "He's one of the bad men I saw talking to Uncle Eric." The man smiled coldly. "The girl has a good memory. That's exactly why we need to talk." "I'm not going anywhere," Theodore said, backing away. "This isn't an invitation, Mr. Harrison." Just then, the nurse attending to Sarah came out of the operating room. "Excuse me, but unauthorized visitors are not allowed here." The man in the suit showed a fake ID. "Private security. We're investigating a threat in the hospital." "What kind of threat?" "Dangerous people looking for a specific child. It's best if everyone stays in their rooms for safety." The nurse looked confused but nodded and went back into the room. The man moved closer to Theodore. "Let's make this easy. Mr. Carbonari just wants a quick word with the girl. A few questions about what she heard and saw. Afterwards, everyone can go back to their normal lives. And if I refuse, it would be a shame if something happened to your wife and your newborn son while they're still vulnerable in the hospital." The veiled threat made Theodore's blood boil, but he knew he was at a disadvantage. He couldn't risk Sarah's and the baby's lives. "Uncle Theodore," Lily whispered, "I can go talk to them, but first I want to tell you something very important." "What is it, dear?" "I know where Uncle Eric hid all the things he stole, and I know where the papers are that show all the family's secrets." The man in the suit leaned forward, clearly interested. "What papers?" "I don't talk to you," Lily said with surprising courage. "I only talk to the boss." "She'll talk to Mr. Carbonari," Theodore said, making a desperate decision, "but here in the hospital, with doctors and nurses around." The man hesitated, clearly not expecting this counteroffer. He said something into a discreet earpiece Theodore hadn't noticed before. "Mr. Carbonari agrees. Hospital conference room, 3rd floor. 5 minutes." As they headed to the elevator, Lily whispered in Theodore's ear, "Uncle, I know things they don't know I know." "What things?" "Uncle Eric used to talk on the phone near the lake every night. And one time, I heard him talking about a place where he kept everything. A place only he knows." "Where?" "In Miss Maria's old house, the one at the end of the property that nobody uses." Theodore remembered the house. It was an old structure at the back of his property that had belonged to the previous landowners. Maria sometimes used it to store old things, but it had been practically abandoned for years. "Lily, are you sure?" "Yes, I am. And there's more stuff there. Not just money. There are papers, photos, and other things he used for blackmail." "How do you know that?" "Because I went there once looking for a place to sleep. I saw everything hidden under the wooden floor." On the 3rd floor, the elevator opened and they were led to a small meeting room. Inside was Vincent Carbonari, a man in his 50s with perfectly combed grey hair, an expensive suit, and a presence that radiated power and danger. "Mr. Harrison," Carbonari said with a smile that didn't reach his dark eyes, "what an unfortunate situation." "What do you want with the girl?" The same thing any businessman wants when there's a potential problem, a solution." Carbonari knelt in front of Lily, studying her with the intensity of a predator sizing up its prey. "And you, little one, are a very big problem for such a small person." "I didn't do anything wrong," Lily said, looking him directly in the eye without flinching. "Ah, but you saw and heard things you shouldn't have. things that could cause trouble for many important people. I only saw Uncle Eric being a bad person. Carbonari laughed softly. Eric is a weak man who got into bigger trouble than he could handle. But you, little one, can help solve these problems. How? By telling me exactly where Eric hid certain properties that belonged to me. Lily looked at Theodore, who gave an encouraging nod. I know where everything is, she said, but first I want a promise. Carbonari raised his eyebrows, clearly not expecting to negotiate with a 4-year-old. What kind of promise? That you'll stop hurting families, and that you'll return the money you stole from all the people. The silence in the room was total. Carbonari looked at Theodore as if questioning whether the child was serious. Little one, he said finally, you don't understand how the business world works. Yes, I do, Lily replied with a seriousness that made all the adults in the room shiver. I understand that people like you hurt people like my mom, and that has to stop. It was at that moment that Carbonari understood he wasn't dealing with an ordinary child. There was something in the determination of that small girl that deeply unsettled him. The discomfort Carbonari felt in the face of the unwavering determination of a 4-year-old child was palpable. He stood up slowly, walked to the conference room window, and looked down at the hospital traffic below, as if recalculating his entire strategy. Little one, he said at last, his back still to them, you have a very romanticized idea of how the world works. My mom taught me that there are good people and bad people, Lily replied, her voice small but firm, and that the good people must always try to stop the bad people. Carbonari turned around, and Theodore noticed something different in his expression, a mix of irritation and something that looked almost like reluctant respect. Your mother, Lucy Mendez, was a very persistent woman, Carbonari said, and the tone in his voice made Theodore shiver. She also had very firm ideas about what was right and wrong. You knew my mom? Lily asked, her eyes widening. I did. She caused me several problems before she departed. The way Carbonari said departed sent a chill down Theodore's spine. What do you mean by that? I mean, Mr. Harrison, that your former accountant was much more troublesome than you imagined. Carbonari sat down again, this time closer to Lily. She didn't just discover Eric's activities, she discovered much more. Like what? Theodore asked, though he feared the answer. She discovered that Eric wasn't the only one in Atherton working for me. There were others, people in very important positions. Lily listened with full attention, engraving every word into her extraordinary memory. What kind of important people? People you know, little one. People who frequent the same places as your family. People you trust. Carbonari's phone rang, and he answered it quickly. Yes? What do you mean they didn't find it? Did they search everywhere? I see. When he hung up, his expression was visibly annoyed. It seems Eric wasn't so honest with us about where he hid certain things. He lied to you too? Theodore asked. Eric told us he hid everything in his office at your house. But my men just searched every inch of the place and found nothing. Lily looked at Theodore with a meaningful expression but said nothing. She knew exactly where Eric had hidden everything, but she wasn't going to reveal it until she was sure she could protect the people she loved. Maybe he hid it somewhere else, Theodore suggested carefully. Oh, he certainly did, Carbonari agreed. And that's why we so desperately need the exceptional memory of our little friend here. Carbonari leaned toward Lily again. Let's make a deal, little one. You tell me everything you know, and I guarantee your new family stays safe. And if I don't tell you? Then people you care about very much might have accidents, just like what happened to your mother. The casual confession fell on the room like a bomb. Theodore stood up abruptly. Are you admitting you killed Lucy Mendez? I'm admitting that accidents happen when people make bad choices. Lily was very quiet for a long moment, her small hands clenched into tiny fists. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with a deep sorrow that broke Theodore's heart. "You killed my mum because she wanted to stop you from hurting people. Your mother got involved in matters that were none of her business. She was trying to protect other children like me." Carbonari sighed, as if he were losing his patience. "Little one, your mother discovered information about very powerful people. Information that could have destroyed entire families, careers, lives. She didn't understand the consequences of what she was doing." "What kind of information?" Theodore asked. "Let's just say that when you have important people owing you large sums of money, you learn a lot of secrets about them. And when you have proof of those secrets—" Carbonari smiled coldly. "You have a lot of power." At that moment, the door to the room opened, and the man in the suit who had brought them in entered quickly. "Sir, we have a problem. The police are surrounding the hospital." Carbonari cursed quietly. "How much time do we have?" "A few minutes. And there's more. We've intercepted police chatter. They know you're here." The tension in the room escalated dramatically. Theodore saw an opportunity and positioned himself protectively in front of Lily. "Looks like your time is up, Carbonari." "Not yet," Carbonari replied, pulling out a cell phone. "I have people in strategic positions in this city. One call from me and your wife and son could have very serious medical complications." The terror that gripped Theodore was absolute. "You wouldn't." "I would and I will, unless the girl tells me immediately where Eric hid my files." Lily looked at Theodore, then at Carbonari. "If I tell you, will you stop threatening his family? If you tell the truth, we'll resolve this quickly and everyone can go on with their lives." "All right," Lily said, making a decision that surprised Theodore. "I'll tell you, but first, I want you to know that I saw a lot more things than you think." Carbonari leaned in, interested. "Like what?" "I didn't just live on the street. I hid in different places every night, and one of those nights, I hid in the place where you and your men meet to talk about the families." Carbonari's face changed from interested to alarmed. "Where?" "In the old house near the cemetery, the one with a room under the main house." Carbonari and his man exchanged tense glances. "You overheard our meetings?" "I heard you talking about all the rich families in town, about how you made them pay you money so you wouldn't tell their secrets, and about how you were going to use that to control who wins the elections." The revelation made Carbonari turn pale. "What else did you hear?" I heard you talking about a judge who owes you a lot of money, and about how he does whatever you say in court." Theodore felt as if the world were crumbling around him. The level of corruption Lily was revealing went far beyond anything he had imagined. "And there's more," Lily continued, her voice growing stronger with each revelation. "I know where you keep all the photos and papers about the important people, and I know the codes you use to open the safes." Carbonari stood up abruptly. "That's impossible. A child can't have memorized all that." "Want me to prove it?" Lily asked. "The code for the big safe is 629157. The one for the small safe is 338249. And you have a red folder with pictures of the mayor doing bad things, and a blue folder with papers about the police chief." The silence in the room was total. Carbonari stared at Lily as if he were seeing a ghost. How can a 4-year-old child have memorized all that? "Because I'm afraid of forgetting the bad things people do. My mom taught me that if I remember everything, I can help the good people stop the bad people." At that moment, they heard sounds of rushing in the hallway, loud voices, fast footsteps, and clearly people organizing for an operation. The man in the suit ran to the window. "Sir, they're coming up. We have to leave now." But Carbonari didn't move. He continued to look at Lily with an expression that mixed terror and a growing rage. "You are far more dangerous than your mother was," he said slowly. I'm just like my mother, Lily replied with pride. She taught me it's always right to stop people who hurt other people. Sir, the man in the suit insisted, we have to go. Carbonari finally moved, but he stopped at the door and turned to Lily one last time. This isn't over, little one. You may have an extraordinary memory, but you're just a child, and children can have accidents, just like their mothers. The explicit threat made Theodore place himself completely in front of Lily. If you lay a finger on her, you'll do what, Theodore? Your own family is still vulnerable. It was at that moment that the door burst open violently and Detective Miller entered with several armed police officers. Vincent Carbonari, you're under arrest. But as the officers spread through the room, they discovered there was a secret exit behind a false panel. Carbonari and his man had disappeared. They got away, Miller said, frustrated, but at least you're all safe. We're not safe, Lily said calmly. He'll be back, and next time he'll try to hurt everyone I love. Theodore knelt beside her. Why did you tell him all that, Lily? Now he knows how dangerous you are to him. Because now I know exactly what he's afraid of, Lily answered, with a wisdom that was terrifying for her age. And when you know what a bad person is afraid of, you can use it to stop them. Detective Miller looked at the girl with admiration and concern. Lily, you've just become the most important witness against the biggest corruption ring we've ever investigated. But that also means you're their #1 target. I know, Lily said simply, but I can't let them keep hurting families. My mom wouldn't have, and I won't either. As they left the room, Theodore carrying Lily in his arms, none of them knew that Eric was watching them from a distance, hidden among the medical equipment in an adjacent hallway, planning his next desperate move. As Theodore, Lily, and Detective Miller headed back to Sarah's room, Eric remained hidden behind the medical equipment, his heart pounding so hard he feared someone might hear it. He had heard every word of the conversation in the meeting room, and now he understood the magnitude of what he had unleashed. Lily wasn't just an inconvenient witness. She was a living weapon against Carbonari's entire operation, and he, Eric, had been responsible for placing her in their hands. The despair he felt was almost unbearable, but it was surpassed by a terrifying realization. If Carbonari found out Lily knew about the safes and codes, he wouldn't hesitate to eliminate the entire Harrison family to protect his secrets. With trembling hands, Eric took out his cell phone and dialed a number he had memorized weeks ago when everything started to fall apart. Hello? A tired female voice answered. Carmen, it's me, Eric. I need to talk to you urgently. Eric, where are you? The police were here looking for you, saying that... Listen, we don't have time. You're in danger. Carbonari is coming after you next because you also owe him money. On the other end of the line, Carmen Montero was silent for a moment. How do you know that? Because I saw the list, Carmen. Your name is on it, along with 7 other families, all with pregnant women, all owing impossible amounts to the casino. My husband doesn't know anything about the debts, Carmen whispered, her voice broken with fear. I know. That's how he operates. He targets the wives when the husbands are traveling, offers easy credit, then uses the debts for blackmail. Eric glanced nervously around the hospital, knowing he could be discovered at any moment. Carmen, I need you to do exactly what I'm about to say. What? Get all the papers you signed for Carbonari and burn them. Then call your husband and tell him everything. It's the only way to protect yourself. Eric, are you okay? Your voice sounds strange. No, I'm not okay. I've done terrible things, Carmen. I tried to hurt Sarah because I was desperate. His voice broke, choked by sobs. And now, because of me, an innocent child is in mortal danger. Meanwhile, in Sarah's room, the family reunion was constantly interrupted by calls from Detective Miller. Lily's revelations had triggered the largest police operation in Atherton's history. Theodore, Miller said, hanging up from another call, I need you to know that what Lily revealed goes beyond anything we imagined. She didn't just expose a local blackmail ring. She uncovered a scheme that involves at least 3 states. Sarah, holding her newborn baby, looked at Lily with immense gratitude. This girl saved not only our family, but dozens of others. But at what cost? Theodore asked, watching Lily, who was sitting silently by the window, looking at the movement outside with an expression far too serious for a 4-year-old. "Lily," Sarah called gently, "come meet your little brother properly." The girl approached the bed, her eyes lighting up when she saw the baby. "He's so tiny, like I was when my mum held me." "Do you want to hold him?" Sarah offered. With infinite care, Lily held the baby in her arms, and something magical happened. The newborn, who had been restless since birth, immediately calmed down and stopped crying. "Look at that," whispered Maria, who had arrived with clean clothes for Lily. "He recognizes the one who saved his mommy." "What are we going to name him?" Lily asked, looking at Theodore. "We haven't decided yet," he replied. "Do you have any suggestions?" Lily thought for a moment. "How about a name that means brave, because he was born in the middle of so much bad stuff, but he managed to get here all by himself?" "Gabriel," Sarah suggested softly. "It means God is my strength." "Gabriel," Lily repeated, smiling for the first time since the crisis began. "Hi, Gabriel. I'm your sister Lily, and I'll always protect you." At that moment, Miller's phone rang again. His expression changed drastically during the call. "I see. Yes, absolutely sure. My God." When he hung up, everyone waited anxiously for news. "We found Eric," Miller announced. "He turned himself in voluntarily at the station and is cooperating fully. But there's disturbing news." "What kind of news?" Theodore asked. "Eric told us Carbonari has had an escape plan in place for months, a route that involves eliminating all witnesses before leaving the country." Lily looked up from the baby she was holding. "He's going to try to hurt a lot of people to get away." "Exactly, and you, Lily, are the main witness." The girl was quiet for a moment, then carefully handed Gabriel back to Sarah. "Detective Miller, can I talk to you in private?" Miller looked at Theodore, who nodded. They stepped out into the hallway, where Lily turned to the detective with impressive seriousness. "I didn't tell you everything I know about Carbonari," she said. "Why not?" "Because some things are too dangerous, but now I think I have to." "What didn't you tell us, Lily?" The girl looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "I know where he's hiding right now." Miller knelt to her level. "Where?" "Remember I told you about the house near the cemetery where they have the meetings? There's a tunnel under the house that connects to the old cemetery. That's how he escapes when he's in trouble." "How do you know that?" "'Cause one night I followed one of his men to see where they went. I saw them go in through the cemetery and come out through the house." Miller was impressed by the level of detail a 4-year-old had observed and memorized. "Lily, this is crucial information. Why didn't you tell us before?" "Because I wanted to be sure he would try to use that exit. And now I'm sure." "How are you sure?" "Because when he was talking to me in the room, I saw him look at his watch 3 times. And I remember from the meetings I spied on, he always said that if he needed to escape quickly, it would always be at 8:30 at night when the cemetery is empty." Miller checked his watch. It was 7:45 in the evening. "Lily, you've just given us Carbonari's exact location at the exact time he'll be there." "But there's one thing," Lily said, her voice getting lower. "He won't be alone, and if you're not careful, he'll realize it's a trap and hurt the people who are helping him escape." "What people?" "People from the families he's using as shields. He always does that when he's scared." Miller felt a chill. "Which families?" The same list he showed before. He kidnapped someone from each family to make sure no one will report him during his escape. At that moment, Miller's cell phone rang. It was from the operations center. Miller. What? When? Damn it! When he hung up, he was pale. Lily, how did you know? We've just received calls from 6 different families reporting simultaneous kidnappings, all pregnant women. The girl lowered her head. Because I heard him explain the whole escape plan. He said if he ever needed to get out of town fast, he would take one person from each family as collateral. And you didn't think it was important to tell us this before. I was going to, Lily said, tears starting to stream down her face. But I needed to be sure you could save everyone, because if I told you wrong and you failed, those women would. They would end up like my mum. Miller understood the terrifying logic of a 4-year-old child trying to protect adults. She had calculated all the risks in her extraordinary mind and tried to create the best possible strategy. Lily, now I need to know everything, absolutely everything you remember about his escape plan. Okay, the girl said, drying her tears. But after I tell you everything, will you let me help save them? Lily, you're a child. You can't participate in a police operation. But I know things you don't, and without that information, those women will die. Miller looked at the small girl who had lost her mother, lived on the streets, saved an entire family, and was now willing to risk everything again to save strangers. What else do you know that you haven't told us? I know where he'll take the women before he escapes, and I know the signal he uses to tell his men to hurt them if something goes wrong. Just then, they heard screams coming from Sarah's room. They ran back and found Theodore pale, holding a note that someone had slipped under the door. What happened? Miller asked. Theodore showed the paper with trembling hands. The message was simple and terrifying. Trade the girl for the 6 women. Old Cemetery, midnight, come alone or they all die. Lily read the note over Miller's shoulder. He's lying, she said calmly. How do you know? Because his plan was never to trade the women for me. The plan is to get me and then kill everyone anyway. The silence that followed was broken by a new revelation from Lily that chilled the blood of everyone present. And I know that because he did the same thing to my mother. Lily's final revelation about her mother's fate fell on everyone like a final sentence. The silence in the hospital room was so thick that the only audible sound was the soft breathing of baby Gabriel in Sarah's arms. Lily, Miller said very gently, kneeling to the girl's level, can you tell us exactly what happened to your mother? The child looked at Theodore, who nodded encouragingly. Then at Sarah, who extended a free hand to her. Holding Sarah's hand, Lily began to tell a story that filled every adult present with a deep horror. My mum found out the bad man was stealing money and blackmailing people. He told her to meet him to talk about the problem. He said if she stopped investigating, no one would get hurt. Where was this meeting? Miller asked. Recording everything. The same place he wants to meet you today, the old cemetery. He always schedules meetings there because he says it's where no one can scream for help. Theodore felt nauseous imagining Lucy Mendez, a kind and hard-working woman, being lured into a deadly trap. And what happened at the meeting? Miller asked, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. My mom brought all the papers she had copied, all the evidence against him. She thought if she handed everything over, he would leave us alone. But that's not what happened, Sarah said softly. No, he took all the papers and then said my mum knew too much, that even without the proof, she could still tell other people what she had discovered. Lily paused, wiping away tears that had started to fall. He said he was going to make it look like a car accident, and that if I told anyone anything, he would do the same thing to me. So, you saw what happened? Miller asked, horrified. I hid behind the trees because my mom told me to stay away, but I was worried. I saw when his men, when they... Her voice failed. Theodore knelt beside Miller. Lily, you don't have to tell us any more details. We understand. But I have to, she said, with a determination that surprised everyone, because it's the same thing he's going to do today with the women he took, even if you hand me over to him. Miller felt a huge weight on his shoulders. A 4-year-old child had witnessed her own mother's murder and was now trying to prevent the same tragedy from repeating with other families. Lily, with all this information you have, we can organize an operation to get Carbonari and save the kidnapped women. It won't work, Lily said calmly. Why not? Because he expects you to try that. He always has plans for when people try to be smarter than him. At that moment, Miller's phone rang. It was from the station. Miller? What? Are you sure? I see. When he hung up, his expression was grim. Eric just told us something crucial. Carbonari has people infiltrated in the police force. He'll know about any operation we plan. Who are the infiltrators? Theodore asked. Eric doesn't know all the names, but he confirmed at least 3 captains and several officers who are paid to pass on information. Lily didn't seem surprised. I know who they are. Everyone turned to her. How do you know? Miller asked. Because I saw them at the secret meetings. I remember all the faces and names I heard. Miller took out his phone and showed photos of several police officers to Lily. With astonishing accuracy, she identified 5 men she had seen working for Carbonari. This one, she said, pointing to a captain, he always arrived last at the meetings and received a thick envelope before he left. The realization that the police operation was compromised from the start changed everything. Miller needed to find a way to save the kidnapped women without using official channels. We have a bigger problem, Theodore said. If we can't trust the police, how are we going to organize a rescue? I have an idea, Lily said, but you're not going to like it. What idea? Sarah asked, still holding Gabriel. The only way to save the women is to make Carbonari believe I'm going to turn myself over to him, but really, we'll be setting a trap. Absolutely not, Theodore said immediately. I will not allow a 4-year-old child to be used as bait. But I won't really be in danger, Lily explained, because I know things about the cemetery that you don't, things my mom taught me before she left. Miller leaned forward. What kind of things? My mom worked there when she was young, before she was an accountant. She knew all the secret tunnels, all the hidden exits. She taught me how to navigate underground if I ever needed to hide from bad people. The information surprised everyone. Your mother taught you to use the tunnels? Theodore asked. She said if bad people ever came after me, I should remember that there are always hidden paths to get out of dangerous places. Sarah squeezed Lily's hand. Your mother was preparing you to survive. And there's more, Lily continued. I know where Carbonari really hid all the stolen money and all the blackmail files. It's not where Uncle Eric said. Miller straightened up. Where? Under the cemetery in the old tunnels. There's a room that was used by the groundskeepers a long time ago. That's where he keeps everything. How do you know that? Because one time I hid there when I was running from bad men on the street. I saw Carbonari's men take boxes and safes there. The revelation completely changed their strategy. If they could access Carbonari's files, they would have enough evidence to expose the entire corruption and blackmail network. Lily, Miller said carefully, would you be able to guide us through the tunnels? I would, but only if you promise you'll save all the women. We promise. And that you'll promise that after all this is over, no one will hurt families like mine anymore. Theodore held Lily's small face between his hands. Lily, you are the bravest person I have ever met, braver than many adults. I just want the bad things to stop happening. Maria, who had remained quiet throughout the conversation, finally spoke up. "Mr. Harrison, we can't let a child risk herself like this." "Maria's right," Sarah agreed. "We've already lost her mother. We can't risk losing Lily too." But Lily pulled away from Theodore and walked to the window, looking out at the approaching night. "You don't understand," she said in a voice that sounded much older than her 4 years. "If I don't do this, other children will become orphans like me, and other mothers will leave like mine did." She turned to face all the adults. "My mom taught me that when you can help people, you should help, even if it's dangerous." At that moment, Miller's phone rang again. The call lasted only a few seconds. "It was one of Carbonari's men," he said when he hung up. "They've changed the meeting time. It's in 1 hour." "Why the change?" Theodore asked. "Because they found out we're planning something. The infiltrated officers passed the information to them." Lily showed no surprise. "I told you he always expects people to try to be smarter than him." "So what do we do now?" Sarah asked, clearly desperate. "Now we do it Lily's way," Miller said, making a decision that would change everything. "We're going to use her knowledge of the tunnels to surprise Carbonari. But how are we going to do that without official police support?" Miller smiled for the first time since the crisis began. "Who said we don't have official support? We're just not going to use the compromised channels." He took out his phone and made a quick call. "Captain Reyes, it's Miller. I need you and the men we trust absolutely. We have an unofficial operation to carry out." "Yes, I understand the risks." "Perfect. Old cemetery in 40 minutes. When he hung up, Lily was smiling, the first genuine smile she had given since it all began. "Now we're talking," she said. "Now we can save everyone." But as they prepared to leave, none of them knew that Carbonari had changed much more than just the time. He had changed the entire plan. And the trap he was preparing was far more deadly than any of them could have imagined. Night had completely fallen over Atherton when the group arrived at the gates of the old cemetery. Captain Reyes, a 50-year-old man with decades of police experience, had brought 6 men he trusted implicitly. Miller had personally checked each of them against the list of infiltrators Lily had identified. "Sir," one of the officers whispered to Reyes, "I still think bringing a child on an operation like this is insane." "She's not just any child," Reyes replied, looking at Lily, who was fitted with a small protective vest and an adapted communication headset. "She's the only person who knows the secret paths of this place." Lily held Theodore's hand firmly, but her expression was determined. "Uncle Theodore, when we go into the tunnels, you have to promise you'll do exactly what I say." "I promise, dear. But you have to promise that at the first sign of real danger, we get out of there." "I promise." Miller checked his gear one last time. "Lily, are you absolutely sure you know all the paths?" "Yes, I am. My mom made me memorize everything. She said I might need this information one day to help good people." The cemetery entrance was watched by 2 of Carbonari's men, but Lily guided the group through an alternative passage she had used during her weeks on the streets. It was a small opening in the back wall, hidden by dense bushes. "This way," she whispered, squeezing through the opening with the agility of someone who had done it many times before. Once inside the cemetery, the atmosphere became oppressive. The moon was hidden by clouds, and the only light came from the small flashlights each team member carried. The air smelled of damp earth and withered flowers. "Lily," Miller whispered, "where's the entrance to the tunnels?" "There are 2 entrances," she replied, her knowledge once again surprising the adults. "One that everyone knows, near the large mausoleum. But that one's a trap. The real entrance is under the statue of the broken angel." She led them between the old tombstones to a marble statue with a broken wing. At the base of the statue, almost invisible under moss and dirt, was a small iron door. How did you find this? Theodore asked. My mum showed me when I was little. She said the tunnels were built a long time ago to transport things during a time when the city had problems. Reyes forced the iron door, which opened with a low creak. On the other side, stone stairs descended into total darkness. Where does this lead? One of the officers asked. There's a small city under the ground, Lily explained. Rooms that were used to store things, tunnels that connect to different parts of the city, and the special place where the bad man keeps everything he stole. As they descended the damp stairs, Lily continued speaking in a low voice, sharing details that made everyone understand why her memory was so extraordinary. There are 12 main rooms underground. The first is where they have their meetings. The second is where they keep weapons. The third is where the computers are. The fourth... Lily, Miller interrupted, impressed, you memorize the function of each room? My mom taught me that when you're scared, you have to pay attention to everything. Every detail can be important to save yourself or save others. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, they came to a long corridor with several doors. Lily pointed to the left. The women aren't down here, she said suddenly. How do you know? Reyes asked. Because there's no sound of scared people, and when they hold people, there are always guards at the doors. It's too quiet here. The observation made Miller stop. Then where are the women? Carbonari lied about where he would take them. He did it to divide your attention. The group exchanged tense glances. Lily, do you know where they really are? I do. They're at the old textile factory on the other side of town. That's where he always takes people when he wants to use more serious blackmail. Reyes spoke quickly into his radio, directing half of his team to the factory. Why didn't you tell us this before? He asked Lily. Because if I had, you would have split up all your people and you wouldn't have enough to get the files here. And without the files, even if you saved the women this time, he would do it all over again with other people. The strategic logic of a 4-year-old left all the adults present impressed and slightly frightened. Lily, Theodore said, did you plan all this? I planned a way to stop the bad man forever, not just save them this one time. Continuing through the tunnels, Lily guided them through an underground labyrinth that proved to be much more extensive than any of them had imagined. The walls were lined with shelves full of boxes, computers, and equipment that was clearly worth millions. My God, Miller whispered. This isn't just a local blackmail operation, it's a central hub for organized crime. The main room is just ahead, Lily said, pointing to a double door at the end of a corridor. But be careful, there's a trap on the door. What kind of trap? If you open it without using the right code, everything in here explodes. Carbonari said that in the meeting I spied on. Reyes stopped immediately. Do you know the code? I do. It's the date my mother died. He uses it because he says it was the most important day for protecting his business. The cruelty of the detail filled Theodore with a deep rage. Carbonari had turned the most tragic day of Lily's life into a password to protect his criminal empire. With extreme care, Lily typed the code into the door's electronic lock. When the door opened, it revealed a room that looked like a high-tech bunker with computers, physical files, and safes of all sizes. Lily, Miller said, surveying the room, this will bring down an entire criminal network. There's evidence here that could imprison dozens of people. I know, she replied simply. That's why my mother died trying to get here. At that moment, they heard footsteps echoing through the tunnels behind them. Someone had discovered their presence. Quickly, Reyes whispered, grab everything you can carry. But Lily ran to a specific computer. This one has everything, all the names, all the blackmail, all the future plans. She typed a sequence of numbers with surprising speed. How do you know the computer password? Miller asked. Because I saw Carbonari type it several times. My memory works like that. I remember everything I see, even if I don't understand it at the time. The computer opened. revealing files that confirmed everyone's worst suspicions. It wasn't just Atherton. Carbonari's operation extended throughout the entire West Coast, involving politicians, judges, businessmen, and even people in the federal government. "Miller," Reyes called urgently, "we have to go. The footsteps are getting closer." Lily quickly copied the most important files to a portable drive Miller had brought. "Done," she said. "Now you have everything you need to stop him forever." But when they turned to leave, they found that the door had automatically locked behind them. "It's another trap," Lily said, running to the door and trying to open it. "Carbonari programmed it so that if anyone touched the computers, the room would lock." The footsteps in the tunnels were getting closer, and now they could hear voices. "Is there another way out?" Theodore asked, trying not to show panic in front of Lily. "There is," she replied, running to a seemingly solid wall. "But it's very small. Only I can fit through." She showed an opening in the wall that was clearly only large enough for a small child. "Lily, no," Theodore said immediately. "We are not leaving you to go alone. But it's the only way," she explained. "I'll go out through here, go upstairs, and open the emergency release that unlocks all the tunnel doors." "What if it's dangerous?" "Uncle Theodore," Lily said, looking him directly in the eyes, "my mom couldn't stop the bad man, but I will." At that moment, they heard Carbonari's voice echoing through the tunnels, much closer than they expected. "Little Lily, I know you're down here. Let's talk like civilized people." The girl looked at all the adults watching her with a mixture of admiration and terror. "Trust me," she said, beginning to squeeze through the opening. "In 10 minutes, you'll be free and you'll have everything you need to arrest him." "Aye!" And before anyone could protest, Lily had disappeared through the opening in the wall, leaving the adults trapped in the room as her small voice echoed from somewhere distant. "Remember, my mom taught me that there's always a way for the good people to beat the bad people." Lily moved through the narrow tunnels with the agility of someone who knew every inch of the path. Her breathing was controlled, despite the fear she felt, and her extraordinary mind processed every sound, every echo, mapping exactly where Carbonari and his men were moving in the main corridors. Reaching the control room her mother had shown her years ago, Lily quickly activated the emergency release system. All the tunnel doors opened simultaneously, allowing Miller, Theodore, and the others to exit the room where they were trapped. But instead of fleeing immediately, Lily did something that would surprise all the adults. She activated the tunnel's internal communication system and spoke directly to Carbonari. "Mr. Carbonari," her small voice echoed throughout the underground complex. "It's me, Lily. I want to make a deal with you." Carbonari's voice responded almost immediately, filled with surprise and irritation. "Little one, where are you? Come out of there and let's talk in person." "No, we'll talk like this, because you've lied to everyone, including your own men." "What do you mean?" Lily took a deep breath, preparing to reveal information that would change everything. "You said my mother is dead, but that's not true." The silence that followed was total. In the tunnels, Theodore and Miller stopped moving, processing what they had just heard. "Little one," Carbonari finally said, his voice now more cautious. "Your mother passed away 2 years ago. You saw it happen." "No, I didn't," Lily replied with a clarity that made all the adults shiver. "I saw your men stage her death. But afterwards, when everyone was gone, I saw you take my mother somewhere else." The confession that followed changed everything everyone thought they knew about the story. "Your mother was alive, little one, but very injured. I took her to a place where she could recover, but also where she couldn't cause any more trouble for my business." Oh, Theodore felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. Lucy Mendez had been alive all these years? "Where did you hide my mother?" Lily asked, her voice firm despite the tears that began to stream down her face. "In a safe place, a place where she's been very worried about a little daughter she believed was dead." The cruelty of the situation was terrifying. Carbonari had separated mother and daughter, making each believe the other was dead, using that pain as a form of control. But now, little one, Carbonari continued, you can be reunited with your mother. Just stop causing trouble and come with me. No, Lily said, with a determination that surprised even herself. First, you're going to pay for everything you've done, and you're going to give back all the money you stole. Carbonari laughed, but there was nervousness in his voice. And how exactly does a 4-year-old child intend to make me do that? Because I've recorded all of your confessions now, and because I know where you really hide all the money. That's impossible. The money is in international accounts that no one can trace. Not all the money, Lily corrected. The real money in cash is hidden under the house where you have your meetings. I've seen you and your men burying boxes there several times. Carbonari's silence confirmed that Lily was right. And there's more, she continued. I've memorized all your bank account numbers, all the passwords you use, all the fake names, everything. How could a child have memorized all that? Because I have the same kind of memory my mother had. The difference is, she used it to uncover crimes, and I'm going to use it to stop criminals. At that moment, Lily activated something that made lights flash throughout the underground complex. Miller and Theodore saw that they were in a much larger facility than they had imagined. There were rooms full of cash, computers, files, and sophisticated equipment. Lily, Miller whispered into the communicator, what did you do? I activated the backup system that records everything that happens here. Now, all of Carbonari's confessions are being broadcast directly to the FBI. And the genius of a 4-year-old's strategy left all the adults stunned. She had used Carbonari's own security system against him. Little one, Carbonari said, now clearly desperate, you don't understand the consequences of what you're doing. There are very powerful people who will be very angry if my business is interrupted. I understand perfectly, Lily replied. That's why I made copies of all the files and sent them to newspapers in other cities too. If anything happens to me or my family, everything will be published automatically. The revelation that a child had orchestrated such a complex operation was almost impossible to believe. How did you know how to do all this? Carbonari asked. My mom taught me that bad people always think they're smarter than everyone else. But they always make the same mistake. They underestimate the people who want to protect other people. Just then, they heard the sound of sirens upstairs. The FBI had arrived, alerted by the broadcasts Lily had activated. It's over, Carbonari, Miller said over the communicator. You're surrounded. But Carbonari had one last card to play. Little one, even if they arrest me, you'll never find your mother without my help. Only I know where she is. It was then that Lily revealed her final surprise. I already know where my mother is, she said calmly, because I found her 3 days ago. The shock of this revelation echoed throughout the complex. Impossible, Carbonari muttered. You kept her in Dr. Vieira's private clinic, making her believe she was too sick to leave, and that I had died in the accident. But I managed to get there and talk to her. Theodore felt tears in his eyes as he understood the magnitude of this child's courage. And what did you two plan? Carbonari asked, knowing he had been completely defeated. My mom gave me all the information she had hidden before you caught her, all the proof she had collected, and together we made a plan to stop you forever. At that moment, a new voice echoed through the communication system, a female voice that made Lily's heart race with joy. Vincent Carbonari, the voice said, this is Lucy Mendez. On behalf of all the families you destroyed, all the children you orphaned, and all the lives you ruined, you are under arrest. The tunnel lights came on completely, revealing that federal agents had surrounded every entrance and exit. Carbonari was well and truly trapped. My daughter, Lucy said through the communicator. You were braver than I ever could have been. Mommy, Lily replied, running through the tunnels towards the main entrance. I always knew you were alive. My heart never stopped feeling you close to me. When Lily finally emerged from the tunnels, she ran straight into the arms of a 35-year-old woman, thin and pale from her time in captivity, but with the same bright blue eyes as her daughter. My little warrior, Lucy whispered, hugging Lily as if she would never let go. You accomplished what I couldn't. You stopped him. Theodore, Miller, and everyone else watched the reunion between mother and daughter with tears in their eyes. But the joy was interrupted when they realized there was still a pending issue. Lily, Theodore said softly, now that you've found your mother, what will happen? Will you leave with us? The question made Lily look from her mother to Theodore, then to Miller, understanding that even after everything, there were still difficult decisions to be made about her future. Mom, she said to Lucy, can I introduce you to my new family? They took care of me when I was alone, and I love them very much too. Lucy looked at Theodore with deep gratitude. You took care of my daughter. She saved my family, Theodore replied, and she became part of it. At that moment, everyone understood that the end of the story would be more complex and beautiful than any of them had imagined. It wouldn't just be about justice and punishment, but about how love and courage can create families in ways that transcend blood and convention. With Carbonari finally being taken to prison and his criminal network dismantled, Lily had fulfilled the promise she had made to her mother and to herself. But now, a new journey was beginning. The journey of rebuilding a life where love had conquered fear and where two families had become one. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a score from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.